This story was shared by a former forest ranger named Michael Harper. He said this happened to him in 2016 while working in a remote national forest in Colorado. Michael had been working as a ranger for almost 4 years, and most nights were quiet. His job was mainly to patrol certain forest roads and make sure no one was camping illegally or starting fires. One night, around 1:40 a.m., Michael was sitting inside his ranger truck parked near a trailhead. The forest was completely dark, and the only light came from the truck's dashboard and the moon above the trees. While he was filling out a patrol report, his radio suddenly made a strange sound. At first he thought it was just static, but then he heard something through the speaker. A voice, very faint. It sounded like a woman saying, "Help! Please help me." Michael immediately grabbed the radio. He asked dispatch if anyone had reported a missing hiker or emergency in the area. Dispatch replied that no calls had been received. That's when Michael realized something strange. The voice didn't sound like it was coming from dispatch. It sounded like it was coming from somewhere in the forest. He stepped out of the truck and listened carefully. At first there was nothing, just wind moving through the trees. Then suddenly, he heard it again. But this time it wasn't through the radio. It came from the woods, a faint voice calling for help. Michael grabbed his flashlight and started walking down the trail. As a ranger, it was his job to investigate situations like this. Someone might have been injured or lost. The deeper he walked into the forest, the darker it became. The trees blocked most of the moonlight. After about 5 minutes of walking, he called out loudly, "Hello, Ranger here. Where are you?" For a moment there was silence. Then the voice answered, but something about it felt wrong. The voice said, "Over here," but the tone was completely flat. No panic, no fear, just calm. Michael followed the direction of the sound deeper into the trees. After another minute, he suddenly noticed something strange. The voice sounded closer, but the trail ahead was completely empty. Then he heard it again. "Help me!" But this time, the voice came from behind him. Michael turned around quickly with his flashlight. Nothing, just trees and darkness. At that moment, he started feeling uneasy. He had been trained to deal with emergencies, but something about this situation didn't feel normal. He slowly started walking back toward the trailhead. But then the voice came again, this time louder and closer than ever. "Help me, please." Michael swung the flashlight toward the sound, and that's when he saw something that made him stop instantly. About 20 feet away, standing between two trees, was a person. Or at least it looked like one. The figure was standing completely still. Michael called out to them, "Are you hurt?" But the person didn't move, didn't respond. They just stood there in the darkness. Michael slowly stepped closer, raising his flashlight. And that's when he noticed something terrifying. The figure's face looked wrong. The mouth was slightly open, but the voice that called for help was not coming from the mouth. It sounded like it was coming from somewhere deeper in the woods, almost like an echo. Suddenly the figure turned its head toward him, but the body didn't move, just the head. Michael said the movement was slow and unnatural, like something that didn't know how humans normally move. At that moment, every instinct in his body told him something was very wrong. He slowly backed away toward the trail. The moment he started stepping back, the voice stopped completely. The forest became silent again. Michael returned to his truck and immediately left the area. The next day, he went back with two other rangers to check the location. They searched the entire area where he saw the figure, but they found no footprints, no campsite, no signs that anyone had been there. And even stranger, there had been no missing person reports anywhere in the region. Michael worked in that forest for another 2 years, but he said after that night he never patrolled that trail alone again. Because sometimes, late at night, the ranger radio would still pick up a faint voice through the static, quietly saying the same words, "Help me." This story was shared online by a man named Daniel, who said this happened to him in 2019 while camping in Oregon. Daniel said he had always enjoyed camping alone. It helped him relax and disconnect from everything. One weekend in late September, he decided to drive to a forest area about 2 hours away from his town. The place wasn't a popular camping spot. There were no official campsites, just a long dirt road leading deep into the woods, where people sometimes parked and set up tents. Daniel arrived around 6 p.m. The sun was already going down and the woods were getting darker quickly. He parked his truck near a clearing and set up a small tent nearby. At first, everything felt normal. The forest was quiet, and the air was cold but peaceful. He started a small fire and cooked some food while listening to the sounds of insects and wind moving through the trees. But around 10 p.m. something strange happened. Daniel said he heard footsteps somewhere in the woods. At first, he thought it was probably a deer. Animals move around at night all the time in forests, but after listening for a few seconds, he realized something was wrong. The footsteps sounded slow and careful, like someone trying not to make noise. Then they suddenly stopped. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and pointed it toward the trees. Nothing, just darkness and rows of tall trees. He sat back down by the fire and tried to ignore it, but about 5 minutes later, he heard the footsteps again. This time they sounded closer. He stood up and shouted into the woods, asking if someone was there. There was no response. The strange thing was that the forest became completely silent. The insects stopped making noise, and even the wind seemed to disappear. Daniel said the silence felt wrong, like something was watching him. After a minute, he heard something else, a rock hitting another rock. The sound came from somewhere deeper in the woods. Then a few seconds later, another one. Someone was throwing small rocks. That's when Daniel started feeling nervous. It didn't sound like an animal anymore. It sounded like a person. He grabbed his flashlight again and slowly walked a few steps toward the trees. "Hello?" he called out. Still no answer, but as he moved the flashlight across the forest, for a brief moment he saw something. About 30 feet away, behind a tree, there was a figure standing there. Daniel said the person quickly moved behind the tree when the light hit them, but he clearly saw a human shape. At that moment, Daniel realized something terrifying. Whoever that person was, they had been standing there quietly watching him. Daniel immediately backed up toward his truck. He didn't feel safe anymore. As he started putting out the fire, he heard the footsteps again, but this time they were moving fast. Crunch, 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 like someone running through leaves. Daniel jumped into his truck and locked the doors. Just as he turned the engine on, he looked toward the trees one last time, and that's when he saw the person again. They were standing at the edge of the forest now, close enough to see clearly in the headlights. It was a man, but something about him looked wrong. His clothes were dirty and torn, like he had been living in the woods for a long time, and he wasn't blinking. He was just staring at Daniel's truck, completely still. Daniel didn't wait any longer. He immediately started driving down the dirt road as fast as he could, but after driving for about 30 seconds, he looked in the rearview mirror, and what he saw made his heart drop. The man was standing in the middle of the road behind him. Daniel had no idea how he got there so quickly. He was just standing there, watching the truck drive away. Daniel said he never went camping in that forest again, and even today he still wonders one thing: how long that man had been standing in those woods, watching him.